everyone, welcome to the UX Chronicles. My name is Irina, and today I have a very special guest, Kent, with me here. Kent was one of my supervisors at Microsoft and my mentor. In the customer-driven team at Microsoft, we gave workshops together to Microsoft employees to make them more customer-driven in the products they designed. Welcome, Kent.
Thank you, Irina. It's really great to be here with you.
I'm so excited.
It's, me too. I'm nervous. Let's see how this goes.
No worries. You have so much years of experience. You're going to be great. So we
Right.
can start with your introduction, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. So, Kent Lowry, my pronouns are he, him. Right now, I'm at a company called Amplinate, but where Irina and I met each other and worked together, I was at Microsoft. And actually, to just sort of talk a little bit about my tech career, it actually started in Washington, D.C. I was working and my first gigs in tech were like writing, editing, information design, technical documentation. And that took me I actually ended up in Silicon Valley next, got married, moved to California, and was in Silicon Valley. And there I did some standard Silicon Valley things like, oh, I became this consultant and worked for different companies, and I joined a startup that failed. Then I was lucky to get a gig at Microsoft. And so I go and join Microsoft last century. And then I was there and I think it's going to be one of the topics today sort of the evolution of what UX research
Mhm.
was and is, and did many things at Microsoft. And then I ended up, I'd never been at a company for more than maybe a couple of years or maybe 3 years. I ended up at Microsoft for more than 25 years and did many things there, learned a lot. Much of it in research, but some of it in different roles, like being a PM on the Excel team, getting into market research instead of UX research briefly. But mostly it was research and then research and design at Microsoft. And then I had a chance to join Amplinate, this small firm that I can talk a little bit about as well, and have switched to running being in this company that Amplinate works around the world and does cross-cultural. Like we really specialize in going deep with human insights and doing that in markets around the world. And we're actually located around the world. Irina and I were just talking about how we have a big presence in Brazil, and we have people in Europe, and we have people in the Philippines in addition to the US. So even as a small company, we have a large global footprint. And then I live in Seattle, and I always tell people that, hobbies are motorcycling. It's always the first one I mention. I really enjoy doing that. And reading. Love to just read eclectically, read fiction, nonfiction, you name it. So I probably talked too long. Irina thought like introduction, I should maybe take a minute, and then maybe I took a lot more than that. But that's kind of a little bit about me.
No, that was perfect. And I also used to actually ride a motorbike back in Nepal, so that's something we have in common.
There you
One
go.
one more thing, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah, thank you for that great introduction. And I know that you have like 25 plus years of experience at Microsoft and other places, and you have worked mostly in research, UX, product, everything in between. So how has the world of UX evolved over time in what you've seen?
Mm. Um, when I joined Microsoft, you could, without too much exaggeration, say that research was usability.
Hmm.
And design was, the joke back then that designers made was they were asked to be pixel pushers. And both of us on both research and design tended to be at the end of the process. Like, oh, we've got this idea and we're doing it. And so we've gotten along to where we can test it out in usability labs. Let's do that. And often designers were asked like, hey, we've got this and now we really need it to look good. And can you help us? So visual design was a big thing and was kind of a bit of the thing back when I started. And then I kind of lived through the evolution where, the team that I joined at Microsoft was called the Central Usability Group. And
Hmm.
we actually changed our name of our role from usability to usability engineer to UX researcher and probably a couple others along the way. But that reflecting some of the evolution that we were doing in research. And, even back in the day, we were doing some outside of the usability lab, doing some field work. But what I saw UX research uh, do was to become more of like holistic research and to, really lab. Actually, at the end of my career is kind of not so much, it was, it wouldn't be surprising that somebody would be like, I haven't been in a usability lab in years. Whereas we were kind of living in the usability labs when I started. So, that's part of the evolution of really, different methods, having more connection, direct connection in the field with people, and, that. And design, on the other hand, sort of leapt forward, I would say, of research. And design, when I started at Microsoft, you talked about the triad that really ran things. It was dev, test, PM. Notice no design,
Yeah.
notice no research. And Microsoft, you know, got rid of the test discipline and replaced that in the triad with design. So not research, but design. And then research came to live under design.
Hmm.
So typically, it's very, very common for the design team sort of has a research arm under it, but the design kind of leading. So that's a bit about like how UX evolved while I was there.
Yeah, that is so exciting to hear like all the beginning parts of it, of how Microsoft, which is one of the big tech companies that we see and so much involved in research, so much involved with the customers, how they have gotten here today with everyone and with your help as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that was also an interesting thing that happened um, during my time at Microsoft was actually what I think about a couple of partnerships that we kind of had, but we kind of didn't take advantage of that we could have.
Mhm.
And one of them was just market research. So market research at Microsoft was this different thing. And especially when I started, we didn't even know about market research, who they were, what
Mhm.
they did. And during my career, there was some partnership with them, but I look back and think that could have been something that could have been a choice to bring those more together that I
Mhm.
didn't see happen in my career. Because I think, you think about like the UX research team helping the product team, the market research team helping the marketing team, and there's overlapping things about building a product and then marketing a product, but that tended to be siloed.
Mhm.
The other sort of maybe missed opportunity for a partnership was when data science really became a thing. So data science, uh, Microsoft had a long career or a long history of, having telemetry data, and then, data science kind of blew up at the same time as like test went away, data science came in, and that was another place where it was like uh, again, there were some partnerships, and I actually worked with data scientists some when I was at Microsoft, but it didn't turn into this like really great partnership and bringing that together and then thinking about like the holistic, you know, holistic research, quantitative, qualitative, and the ability of these great qualitative researchers
Mhm.
to partner up with data science. Maybe that's happening much more at Microsoft than it was when I was there, but it wasn't much of a thing when I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, market researcher is so close with UX research. And I was also talking to this another person in my previous podcast that it is also sort of interchangeably used sometimes in job descriptions, market researcher and UX researchers. And like you said, it was not a big like fuse between them and Microsoft before,
Mhm.
but now maybe in the work you're doing, how has it changed than before? The research side of it, the collaboration side of it.
In the work that I'm doing now.
Hmm.
Um, an interesting thing is we have at Amplinate, we have great qualitative researchers, and they have an ability to do really good market research. And often, most of our clients are like product teams and, research UX researchers who work on product teams or designers or program managers. But we also do market research projects and work with marketing people and help them with qualitative research. So I see that, you know, um, there's a lot of, like the kinds of methods that a market researcher can rely on and that a UX researcher can rely on can really overlap.
Yeah.
Uh, my experience at Microsoft was the market researchers tended to be much more about doing surveys
Hmm.
and doing that. And then UX researchers were much more about, small N kinds of things, but it would also sometimes do some surveys. And then the market researchers would do focus groups and things. So you can see it's how they really cross and
Hmm.
how they can really work together.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm sure that you have worked on so many projects, so many interesting and important projects in the past. So do you remember any aha moments or any research study that was so pivotal for a product?
Actually, I've got one from my Amplinate time, and it relates to one of the things we talk about doing with our projects is trying to make the research an immersive process for our clients, for our partners. And we were lucky to have a project with a large tech company where it was actually what we would call a cultural immersion. So actually taking a large team down to Brazil,
Mhm.
where we have a good presence, where Amplinate has uh, because one of our co-founders is actually from Brazil. So tended we have a presence there. And it was actually a diverse team of about a dozen people. So it was like uh, market researchers and UX researchers and planners and designers. And we took them down to go and have some in-home visits and learn about the Brazil market. And they really had this aha about like, oh, that's how it works. That's how people like in their case, they were very interested in like, how a small business is successful and how the commerce works and everything like that. And they were like, oh, we there's something that we need to do here for the Brazil market in particular, or we cannot be successful. Then an interesting thing, we're like this the vendor, we're not part of the company.
Mhm.
So then we don't know about the follow-ups that are going to happen. Although we did have a lot of insight because at the end of the week that we were doing all the visits and everything, we had the last workshop and this aha about like what
Mhm.
they needed to do. So then, things take time and especially, big tech things can take time. So fast forward, I don't know whether it was 6 or 8 months, and then we see it happen. We see it happen. Like,
Yeah.
oh, look, as a result, as a result of this research,
Yeah.
they made this huge change for what they are offering in Brazil.
Mhm.
Very cool to see. So that was, most of the time it's not a one study thing where that big thing happens.
Yeah.
I was actually at Microsoft when we did the Ribbon UI, and the Office
Mhm.
went and kind of really revamped and really dramatically changed the user experience in Word and PowerPoint and all of their applications. And that was a long journey, many studies,
Mhm.
uh, but there was significant research behind it, and that was kind of I think from a user experience, it's like, oh my gosh, they just totally changed this thing, So it's kind of a aha in
Mhm.
that regard. But it wasn't one study, and it wasn't one, and it was like, really also it's that partnership with the development team all up and the research team helping to, inform. Also, very wise product leaders can often think about the research that they can get can help to mitigate risk in what they're going to do. And so, with all of the research that we did, we had some understanding of, how to introduce this and how it was going to work. But I can also tell horror stories about the things that didn't go so well in that.
Yeah, definitely. What you said is so true. Like, it's not just one research project that you do and bam, that you get your like golden star. It's a lot of work. There are a lot of people doing that work, and with that continuous effort, you see a storyline build up. Like things
Yep.
just match up, they just make sense, and then you move forward. Because sometimes there's this idea that you just talk to customers and you just get answers, but that's not what UX research is just about.
Yeah, it's much more, you can actually think about it's so much that's not about the research itself. Like if you're going to do something, that idea of immersive research, how do you bring people along?
Yeah.
And then, when you finish a study, like how does that turn into the impact that you're trying to drive? And
Mhm.
if you're a researcher at a Microsoft or an Amazon or a Google or some company, like the amount of work that you need to do that has, sort of you could think of it has nothing to do with the research per se, but it's like building the relationships and evangelizing and bringing people along, sort of doing change management of like, maybe they have some ideas that you need to disabuse them of. And how do you do that? How do you change people's minds or bring people along with new information?
Mhm. Definitely. And you touched a little bit upon horror stories and things that does not always go right in research. So, what were some of the main challenges in figuring out such a new field like UX research at that time, or just some of the stories?
Oh, that's funny. So go back to my beginning
Hmm.
and kind of the joke at the time. So we're talking the 90s. We're talking long time ago. And there actually HCI wasn't so much a thing.
Yeah.
And so what Microsoft was doing, the joke was that they were going across the lake from the Redmond campus to the UW campus
Okay.
and sort of raiding the psych department, like the graduate psych department, and getting people with that kind of like, oh, who is it that we could get that could understand how to do experiments with humans and learn things? That might be psych grads. Um, and and then also like the discipline, a very important thing, and this is important if you're, working within a company and trying to do anything, is having exec sponsorship. So Microsoft happened to have some executives, a couple of executives who were very interested in this idea of having this kind of research to help them to understand their customers and what's going to serve their customers in addition to serving the business.
Hmm.
And so, that made a difference in like building up this idea of having this usability
Hmm.
team. And then, if you think about the evolution of of UX research, from that time,
Hmm.
it's also important to think about like, well, you get this place, you get this exec sponsorship, and they build these labs for you, and then you get these usability labs. Then you have to think about how you break out of that box. Like you get the place in the first place, but that's not the place where you want to end up. Where you want to end up is like, no, not at the end of the process and just doing usability studies, but throughout the process in the beginning and trying to really impact what's going to happen and what should happen as a result of understanding humans and the customers. So that was that was the journey from like what it was, the pixel pushers and the usability people to the design driven projects and research that's like doing foundational research and not just incremental doing usability, which, took awesome people, awesome talent in the UX world, and then doing those things like getting the sponsors and helping people to understand the value of UX and
Mhm.
making it a thing that's, much more integral to the development process.
Yeah, I can only imagine all the things, the beginning of the UX and what people had to go through, how they had to manage other stakeholders and convince them that this is important, this is what's going to help with the products.
Yes, exactly. And actually, funny thing about like talking about impact, one of the ways that you can think about like substantial impact that UX research can have is on the negative side of things. So yes, like coming up with ideas and helping those ideas and making them go in the right direction, but also killing bad initiatives, bad features, bad ideas. And that's, I'll sometimes talk about like, if you want to be able to point to research and that you can say it definitely really helped the business. Sometimes it's about like killing ideas that are, oh yeah, it turns out this is a bad idea. People aren't gonna, it's not gonna work. And so it's interesting that the negative can be positive, as far as like positive in like an impact, but by making ideas go away, it's sometimes how UX research can show that it's powerful.
Definitely. That is really powerful to think about because a lot of the times when we go into this research, we have sort of a bias in our minds and we're going to test if this works, but sometimes it does not. And a lot of times we want it to work because we have put so much energy and time into it that we really want this product or this something to work. But yeah, sometimes it's good to know in the early stages that it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, I had a colleague at Microsoft who the word validate was a very
Oh, yes.
dirty word to him.
Yeah, that was.
And it's like, let's not validate a hypothesis or validate an idea. Let's test it. And and an interesting thing about that, about like saying that that's a dirty word and telling people that that was a dirty word, was this whole thing about the importance of language and how you talk about things and how you frame things. And so, it was kind of impactful within our workshops that we did, for driving empathy for us to talk about, how to talk about things and how we talk about things and therefore how we think about things. And so, that's another part of like, um, driving the culture to understand research and develop and to value research and
Mhm.
to think about it like how do we think about things and how do we think about what research can do.
Yes, yes, definitely. The word validate, that is what I was thinking about. And you, thanks for that. Um, and you mentioned about usability labs. Do you mind explaining what happens inside it and what is a usability lab?
What is a usability lab? That's a great question. So the sort of standard usability lab that we had in those early days of Microsoft was there was a room and it tended to have like a computer in it, a PC, because it was Microsoft. And somebody would come into that room and we would set up some sort of study, which they would sit in that room. They'd have this big mirror, a one-way mirror, so they're brightly lit. They're sitting there at a PC. And on the other side of the mirror would be your usability specialist or usability person, often accompanied by program managers, sometimes developers, or sometimes others. And this usability person would have come up with what the protocol was for the study. Like we're going to have this person come in, we're going to have them do things so that we can understand how well the software is working for them. that's sort of a standard old-timey way that usability worked. Over time, then it was like, oh, it's not a PC, it's a mobile device. Also, you could have a person in that room, and you would be the usability person or the researcher would be sitting with them and doing things and doing like, working with a paper prototype. So working with low fidelity things that aren't on the computer. Like, in that first example where the person's sitting at the PC and the researchers on the other side of the glass, there's often like it could be software that's shipped, but it could often be prototypes that they're using on the computer. And then on that other side of the glass, you actually have cameras in the room where the person is, so you can see how they're reacting, or see what they're doing, or see what they're doing with their hands, you could also have technology to track what's going on the machine. With those studies that I was doing back in the 90s, there was some sort of note taking on the other side of the glass, where you're controlling things, and you also have a microphone that's shouldn't be working until you press a button. I do have the horror story from the time when it was working.
Oh no.
I was running a study, and I had a group of PMs and others, and we were talking about what was going on the other side of the glass, and the person said, I can hear you. And it was a lucky one where nothing inappropriate was said. Actually over time, that was training that we would give to our people about, like, respect, make sure we're all very respectful of this person. And, it's like, and, in case the microphone's on, but even not in case the microphone is on, because, it's like, that's actually an interesting role of the researcher, is to set up how to think about participants in these studies, and how to make sure that how to help these engineers to not think of them as um, you know lesser or stupid because they don't know how to use the software, but it's like it's software's fault if they don't know how to use it, and they're teaching us, and so think of them in that way. um, but I'm digressing from your question about the lab. That's sort of how it's set up. But then also, as this idea of a lab evolved, like in Xbox, they have what they call playtest labs, where
Mhm.
you can have a whole bunch of people coming in, gamers coming in, and they're all trying something out, and that data is all being collected. Or you can have a lab that's more like a living room set up, so that it's sort of making it seem like somebody's at home, and you're testing out ideas that could happen in the home, like, the family watching TV, or doing something, some sort of computing thing or something within an environment like that. So the idea of a lab be very different as to what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Like I can see UX research and the labs have evolved so much, but there's also similarities in what you were talking about. Shifting gears a little bit towards the future of UX, there's a lot of new things coming up. There's AI and so many new technologies. So, with the advancement of all of this and the economic condition, we see sort of a decline in UX jobs and just UX researchers, especially a lot of them got laid off. There were a lot of news. So, do you think that this is just a phase, like you've seen this cycle before, or do you think this is the end?
I hope it's not the end. I don't think so. I go back to the idea, to the what I mentioned about data science. Like, I think some people maybe thought, when data science was really exploding as this thing, and like companies were, hiring data scientists and really relying on them for a lot of the information about what was going on with their customers, that it's like, oh, well, that's what we need. We don't This UX research, like, we can just get that through data science. That didn't kill UX research. AI, ironically, like for Amplinate, we're doing a bunch of AI studies. So it's actually kind of created new work for us. Um, and then, I think it's sort of obvious that AI will change things for the UX research discipline, if only by giving us new tools and, giving us AI advancements that help with efficiency of some of the things that we do. It's a very time intensive thing to take notes and to understand and summarize transcripts and things like that, where AI can play a part. Um, as far as sort of seeing it before, yeah, I mean the tech kind of going up and down. If I started in the '90s, that means I was there for the dot-com explosion, and I was there for the 2008 thing, and that we as a discipline came through. Um, but you do have to change and adapt. So AI is changing the tech landscape, and how do you adapt to that? How do you leverage that? How do you ride the wave of what's going on with AI? I do know people who say, yeah, it's not it's not really that. It's just a fad. I don't think AI is just a fad or anything like that. I think it's a new wave of technology, and it's going to give us new tools. But I'm not, and I know it's a hard time for people in the UX research discipline right now with the layoffs that have gone on. But I think it's just going to be, different and changed as a result of AI becoming more of a thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm sure a lot of UX researchers are also glad to hear that you just need to ride the wave and more things are coming up, will come up in the future. Yeah. And
Hmm.
in that same context, I also see a lot of big tech companies outsourcing UX researchers to other countries, maybe because it's cheaper or maybe because they're better. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's sort of funny asking me that because I work at this company where one, there is no physical presence.
Hmm.
Our founders are in Paris. I'm in Seattle. I've got my colleagues and friends that I'm going to go visit soon in Brazil. We have people in the Philippines. We have people in India. So to some degree, there's outsourced. We're sort of global sourced, you know. Um, one thought I do have about like the idea of outsourcing UX research, and especially from our perspective at Amplinate, with like we want to really deeply understand people in their context and their culture and the nuances of who they are and where they are and the culture that they're in. And that's sort of something that you can't outsource. Like if you want to understand uh, people in Brazil, um, you can't do that. You can't say, hey, you people in India, tell us about the people in Brazil without, if you want a deep understanding, without really uh, having people who are from that culture, which is a reason that we're all over the place because we want to be able to have a deep understanding. It's sort of that there's the saying "not about us, without us" that the LGBTQ and maybe other communities use, and that's how if you're in qualitative research, want to deeply understand people and their perceptions and how they feel and how they think about things, um, you need to have local people help you to understand them.
Hmm.
Um, so that said, I think there are things that you could outsource. Um, one of the things that we kind of outsource, and not so much in a geographical perspective, but in a expertise perspective, is like quantitative research. Like we have quantitative partners that we work with, and I could see like you know doing some quant analysis of data that we collected that we could like go somewhere and get it done well and cheaply. But for the qualitative research, um, we rely on doing that locally, and you can do, and we do that. Not, it's not like we have to hire somebody in every country in the world. It's just like when we're going to do a project, then we go find people in that place to work with us and to help us to understand. So, an example that I give is like we had a client come to us and say, we want to do this work in Egypt and we want to understand people in Egypt. And it's like, okay, we have a network. We can find people who are Egyptian who can work with us on this. And they did. Same thing in Nigeria, same thing in South Africa, places that we don't have employees, but we find them to do it. So I'm sort of rambling off, but for on your question of outsourcing, and if you think about UX and qualitative research, uh, I think that I have a point of view of like you need to have the right people in the right with the right knowledge to do the work. And in some cases that doesn't matter where they are, but in many cases it really matters where they are and where they're from.
Mhm. Yes, thank you for that. I think you put it so well in terms of there's so much nuances in especially the qualitative UX research side and who talks to people and who's their target users. It's so important to know them, the nuances. That goes a long way in the story you're telling and the products you're building.
Yeah, I was one that comes to mind. I was doing research in India. So I'm with my Indian colleagues. We go in and we have a conversation with somebody. And like I come out of it thinking, oh, I learned this and this and this. And then my Indian colleagues say, none of what that guy said was true. These are the red flags. This is what, so ignore everything. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. And that's the kind of trap that if I had gone and done that, met with that person by myself, I
Yeah.
would have thought I've learned some things that were just not, they just weren't true.
Yeah. So we're heading towards the end of our discussion, Kent. Everything you've said has been so fruitful, and I hope this has helped everyone else as well. So before we leave, do you have any tips for people who want to pursue UX research in the future or anyone who's looking for jobs?
Hmm. Um, for the people who are looking to break into UX,
Mhm.
I guess a question that I would maybe recommend asking yourself, or questions to ask yourself, is it right for you? And are you right for it? And I think that I could think about and talk about like how we think about people who would be good to join us at Amplinate. And there's just sort of these basic human qualities. So training and background knowledge and things like that about doing UX research, great. But like the things that we need to look for are people who are highly empathetic, who are really awesome listeners,
Mhm.
who have an ability with storytelling, because that's so, so important, who are really great
Mhm.
collaborators. All those kinds of things, it's like to be a great qualitative researcher, there's just sort of like you need to be this kind of person. Doesn't mean that you need to be like an extrovert, but it does, you do need to be somebody who's passionate and really is curious and wants to learn about other people and wants to help other people and help like companies to understand people and serve them well.
Yeah.
So that's something that I would say, are you right for it? In addition to, is it right for you if thinking about a UX career? Also, it's frankly a hard time to break into the to this as a new thing if you're like a career switcher.
Mhm.
So know that it's a hard time because there's a lot of great experienced people out there who are also looking for opportunities, and so know that it's a hard time.
Mhm.
Let's say you're on the path. You maybe have finished a HCI master's or PhD, um, then it's like, oh, how do you break in if you're really trying to start? Um, I think being another advice that I've given to sort of new people in career is like think about how you are going to be stand out and be somebody that a hiring manager is going to want to follow up on with and maybe is going to remember if they're looking at a lot of different applications. And so like have a great online portfolio and don't be afraid if like, oh, I don't have a lot of industry experience, so what do I put in a portfolio? Well, what is it that you think you're really going to bring? And you kind of have to sell yourself and
Mhm.
think about like, a resume. Yes, you need a good resume, but then an online portfolio can go so much deeper and tell so much more about you. And you can talk about you as you who you are as an individual and why somebody would should be interested in you and then refer back to the empathetic, curious, those kinds of things. Um, and then the also it's networking is how things work. And so, do you have a network that or can you build up your network to help you to find opportunities and to get opportunities? And then if you're like assessing potential gigs, like, lessons that I learned from my career, like how important it is to have a place where they're going to care about you and they're going to
Mhm.
support you and you're going to have learning opportunities. If you're going to go work at some big company, like the manager is awesome, but also the manager's manager is good. Like the chain of command, at least in those first couple steps up from you. Um, yeah, and I think going back to that, like who you are as an individual, like how can you really are you going to a place where you can be your authentic self and it's going to be a good place for you. Um, so, and then, another also as you're early in your career, or wherever you are in your career, like the idea of thinking about getting mentorship and having mentors, not just a mentor,
Yeah.
because you can get mentorship in different kinds of like, you know, career, but also like, oh, product development and understanding that from maybe a developer's point of view or a program manager's point of view or a designer's point of view. So, um, those are those are some thoughts. And just, for those people who like maybe been laid off and are looking to find a new thing, like those things about, find a place that's the ideal place is going to have that supportive and great manager and everything, but know it's gonna be hard work. Like find, especially like you're a sort of a senior person and I just know friends and that
Mhm.
it's a lot of work to do go out there and find the opportunity and get yourself in the door. So just know it's going to be hard work.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kent. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed talking to you and getting all the past and the future and everything between of the UX research. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you. And for those who are watching, if you like this, please like and share and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you next time.